So I'd like to welcome you all. Those of you who are coming from outside of NYU, welcome to NYU. My name is Nyarko. I'm a professor of economics here in the Faculty of Arts and Science. I'm also have the privilege of being the director of NYU's Africa House, which is a doorway to Africa on campus. And indeed, we like to think all of New York, maybe all of America. First of all, I'd like to thank His Excellency for coming. It's a great privilege to have you here yet again. I'll have more remarks for His Excellency in a second. And I'd particularly like to welcome his wonderful wife, who is also here with him. And Madame Kikwete, I'd just like you to know that when His Excellency was here in residence, he was always talking about you so affectionately. He was actually a model, role model for all of us. I should treat my own wife the same way. So I've learned a lot from him. So welcome to NYU as well. I would like to thank also our Deputy Provost, Dr. Cybele Raver. I'm going to introduce her in a second, but please, a big round of applause for her. I'll tell you why in a moment. Thank you for coming, Cybele. I would like to recognize Ambassador Wilson Masilingi, who is in Washington, D.C., Ambassador for Tanzania. Please rise. And also Ambassador Modest Mero, who is the Ambassador and Permanent Resident here for the, at the United Nations. Please. And indeed, I believe a number of members of the Permanent Mission of Tanzania are here. Can you please stand and be recognized from the Permanent Mission, UN Permanent Mission? Thank you so much for coming. A lot of what we do is supported by our friends, donors, board members. So of course, we'd like to thank all of them. On campus, we have a number of institutes, houses, Italy, Germany, Ireland. They're all supported by their donors. One of them is actually supported by a princess, okay? One of the houses. I won't mention which one, but I would like to mention that we also have our royal family, a family that's been supporting us and me personally for quite a while, and a family that without them, today's event actually would not have taken place. So I would like to recognize the Bergman family, Stan, Marion, Eddie. They always hated when I mention their names in public. You can see them a little bit embarrassed, but they really have been helpful. And today's event actually took place, the spark for it took place in their wonderful New York apartment. They hosted a dinner for me, for some guests, and that's where I met His Excellency, and that's actually where I popped the question. Would you like to come to NYU and write a book? Okay, so it's, I think it's appropriate that we salute them. Without them, it would not have happened. So the Bergman family, Stan, Marion, and Eddie, I really want to say thank you for all of this, okay? Really appreciate it. Okay, so on that note, as I said before, everything we do here is supported by the higher-ups. And in particular, we have a wonderful provost office that has been supporting Africa House over the years. Africa House is actually in a house that's provided by the provost office. Those of you who are outside of the academy, you may ask me, what the heck is that word provost? What does it mean? So think of the provost as the chief academic officer of the university. We do academics here. We write papers, do research, get grants, teach. All of that is being run by the provost, okay? So the provost is our chief academic officer. Academics, the most important thing here. I would like to bring up here in a second somebody who is independently a scholar. She is an applied psychologist. I looked her up on the web. She's got this wonderful work, the Chicago School System, Chicago School Review Panel, and increasingly in education these days, It's not just a politician will come and say, we'll have to do this, but they actually get the academics to test whether the things they are saying is right or wrong. There's a whole field called randomized controlled trials. Our school systems are large. They're in the millions, Chicago, New York City. If the students in those systems were a country, they wouldn't be the smallest country in the world, okay? So this is a big thing. And so she does wonderful work in this arena. She's a great scholar, and she also happens to be our deputy provost and somebody who has been really fighting hard for all of us, for Africa House, for everything that we do, and also a great cheerleader. So please, a huge, big round of applause for Dr. Cybele Raver. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. It is such an honor and such a pleasure to be here tonight for so many reasons. First, on behalf of New York University's president, on behalf of New York University's provost, both Andrew Hamilton as the president and Catherine Fleming as the provost, it is my honor to welcome His Excellency, Dr. Jakaya Kikwete, former president of the United Republic of Tanzania from the years of 2005 to 2015. Thank you so much for being here. We're truly honored. This evening is especially important to me in so many ways. First, because it has been a highlight of my leadership in the Provost's office to serve as liaison to NYU's Africa House. Africa House represents such a dynamic and exciting intellectual home for so many scholars and leaders, both at NYU and indeed in the world. It's really been truly an anchor of intellectual energy and excitement for many, many, many different students, but also many scholars and as well as leaders. NYU Africa House is interdisciplinary. It is an institute devoted to the study of contemporary Africa, focusing on economic, political, and social issues on the continent and with programs in the arts as well. Africa House reflects a global vision, truly a global vision of its leader, Dr. Nyarko, and I really want to highlight the extent to which he was really a forerunner of the university's focus on global affairs and a global mission. It was actually Dr. Nyarko who was one of the key faculty who really led that university-wide initiative and really stands as one of its pillars throughout the transition to a new presidency at NYU. The status of Africa House as an intellectual powerhouse is manifest here tonight. We have, as you can see from the guests in our audience, a large number of professors and students conducting research in areas of African arts, economic development, economic growth, macroeconomics, microfinance, analysis of the effectiveness of foreign aid, so many different questions across high-level talks, seminars, and forums with African heads of state, ministers, and policymakers brought together. President Kikwete, we want to thank you for representing such a key part of this program's success. You've graced us with your presence and your work. You offer a perfect, brilliant start to a new program that we are so happy that Dr. Nyarko and you could have started last spring as the inaugural member of our former African Presidents in Residence program at Africa House. As a former president of the United Republic of Tanzania from 2005 to 2015, Your Excellency brings this program tremendous visibility and really star power, so to speak. You came in 2005 for our NYU Africa House Presidential Forum, and you were kind enough to return again for our 10th anniversary during the your final year in office. And now it's our honor to host you as you have written your memoir with staff and students. It's my understanding that you've been deeply engaged in the life of our institution. For example, we have had a student, Asad Lilani, also from Tanzania, who had the opportunity to work at Africa House during His Excellency's residency. What an honor it must have been as a student to work with you on your memoir, and we are so thrilled that you graced us during the graduation ceremony at Gallatin to celebrate. We also know that we have with us tonight Professor Ngina Soyini Chiteji. I'm so sorry, I've practiced that twice in the elevator, but I may have gotten it wrong, who is a faculty member both in NYU's Wagner School of Public Service and in Gallatin, and who's leading a course today, this year, on trade, technology, Tanzania, and the Swahili Coast. Welcome to you and to your students to this event. We also know that His Excellency has worked with the Rory Myers School of Nursing, supported by Miracle Corners of the World, to really develop healthcare partnerships in this space. And that kind of contribution, both to literary and to policy, including health policy concerns, is absolutely a wonderful thing. We know that you have represented many firsts with NYU and with Africa House, and it was our honor to have you be our first former president in residence at NYU Africa House. So thank you so much for sharing your invaluable insights, leadership, and passion with the NYU community. On behalf of the university, I really want to thank everyone for being here tonight, but I especially want to thank the creator of this special program, Professor Nyarko. I've known Professor Nyarko, director of NYU Africa House, for many years. When he came to the office of the provost to present this idea of former African heads of state writing their memoirs following their time in office, we were in love with this idea, and we fully supported it. And we really want to thank him, so please join me in thanking him. We really do want to thank him again for his abiding vision and leadership, not only for Africa House, but for the university, and frankly, for our globe as we move towards an increasingly global and internationalist perspective. So, Dr. Nyarko, please join us, and we'll move to the next step in tonight's program.
All right, thank you, Cybele. That was really great, wonderful. So we moved to our program, and we're in the academy, we're in the university. I'm here with many of my fellow professors. Let me just recognize a few of them that I see here. Professor Tiboho Moja. She is a leading scholar of education in South Africa. Say hi to her. Wave or something. Carlos, I saw you a second ago. Chirinos, okay, over in the back there. Music, doing a lot of work on Africa. I saw Offiong somewhere. Dr. Offiong Aqua over there. He's a doctor from Nigeria. If you want to know anything about Nigeria, he's the man, okay? And I saw Chris somewhere. Chris Nikwe, World Food Program. Where are you, Chris? Over there, okay, all right. So that's another big partner of ours. Thank you for coming. So we're in the academy, and I just wanted to just give you a few words before I introduce the speaker. Why are we doing all of this, okay? And the goal is to get more voices of Africans in Africa to be heard here in the United States, in New York. Those of you who are in the literary field, when we talk about Africa, there's this one book, anybody in English or comparative literature, is Joseph Conrad, Heart of Darkness. How many of you have read that book, heard of the book? All right, so it's a wonderful book. It sort of changed. It was 1899. It was the Victorian time. It sort of changed the field of literature. A great book. The problem is, if you read the entire book, the only words you hear of Africans in the book is grunt. That's it. I kid you not. There are no African voices that I could recall in that book. And yet it's a great book. Anybody going to Africa, am I mistaken, students? It's recommended you read Joseph Conrad. And yet there are no voices of Africa. Around the same time, we had the Berlin Conference. That was a conference that partitioned all of Africa. Again, this is they call it the wonderful Victorian days. For many Africans, that's the worst time, actually. That's when colonialism, scramble for Africa was happening. Again, Berlin Conference, they're dividing all the countries. No African voices. So my own home country, Ghana, a line was drawn. The French took one part. The English took another part. My grandfather is buried in one part. I live in the other part. That's the reality today, okay? So for me, the goal was, let's create an institution. Let's create an environment where we can hear the voices of Africans in Africa. That's my goal. I hate to be like Donald Trump and talk about fake news or anything, but when you read the news, you sometimes get the wrong impression of Africa. Everything is conflict, crisis, as if there are no real people there getting married and talking about their wives and their children and loved ones, etc. So again, the goal is just to have some of these voices, which is not only about crisis. And it would be great if we could hear it here. So if you ask me what I think about all of this, why this is so important, that's the reason. Very simple reason. Let's hear those voices. Let's see what's happening. So we have here today somebody who is a great man, former president of the United Republic of Tanzania from 2005 to 2015. He previously held various positions as Minister of Foreign Affairs, Minister of Finance, Minister of Energy and Minerals. During his presidency, he was always committed to the development agenda, particularly women and children. He's been co-chair of the UN Commission of Information and Accountability on Women's and Children's Health. He's been on a number of UN panels, international panels. If you saw our announcement, you could have seen him with President Obama. He has peacefully left office. And since he's left, thank you. Since he's left, he's continued to be engaged, running a number of things. He sometimes seems to me as busy as when he was a president. And I just wanted to footnote that he has a wonderful foundation. I hope you all support it. Over the course of our conversation today, you're going to be hearing a lot about that. So without much ado, I know you don't want to hear from me. You want to hear from him. I would like to bring up here His Excellency, the former President of Tanzania, Dr. President Kikwete. Please, a big round of applause for him.
That's even better. I'm not used to the podium these days.
So this conversation is going to be a bit more relaxed than we normally see him here. He's normally at the podium giving us a big speech about what's going to happen and crises and the economy. But this one's going to be a bit more relaxed. We want to learn a bit more about him, how he works. He has been in residence at NYU, as you've heard. He was actually living in so our fellow faculty, Thibault. You may have not have seen him, but he was actually in building 4, if I may announce it. Okay? And so he lived with the faculty. He showed up at Africa House. He was one of us. And so he was here to write a book. And so I'm just going to begin the conversation and ask him a few questions. The first question is going to be about why he wanted to write the book. And just for all of you, I just wanted to say this is the way we're structuring it. There are going to be 3 parts. It's going to be the part prior to the presidency. There's going to be a part, the 10 years when he was president. And there's going to be a third part, post-presidency. Okay, so we're going to divide the conversation that way. I will ask him some questions. He may decide to read from his book. He may decide not to read from his book. It's completely up to him. We have 20 minutes for each section. So if it goes quickly, I'll ask you in the audience for questions on that section. When we finish 1 hour's worth of back and forth, it'll be general question and answer. You can ask him whatever your heart feels like. Okay? So those are the rules. All right, Your Excellency. So to begin with, you came here to write a book. Why?
Because you wanted me to. Well, first let me thank you, Professor Nyarko, Deputy Provost, for having me here, for giving the opportunity to stay at a wonderful place. The residencies of the professors. So it was a big honor for me. Every time people saw me, they believed I'm one of those big scholars. But thank you so much. You know, I really enjoyed my stay. You gave me wonderful accommodation. The environment was quite good, So I could think, I could write in a very tranquil atmosphere. I had no encumbrances at all. So thank you so much. But of course, I thank Professor Yao for for encouraging me to write. You know, I have the idea of the ambition of writing, about telling my story. But I've always been having a problem of how, when, where. Well, fortunately, I met the professor. He said, you must write. I said, okay, fine. As men have been telling me, you must write. We met again, he said, you must write. And then the third time he said, I have a plan. He said, give me the plan. So he gave me the plan of how to go about it. We looked at it. We said, this is fine. So that's how we ended up here at the villa, at the village 4, and then we started working. But I really wanted to tell the story of my life because, one, it's important for my family. You know, when I was now beginning to write about the family tree, my family tree, both the maternal and the paternal one, I ran into a lot of difficulties. A lot of difficulties because there was virtually nothing written. Because, you know, these are old people. There was no formal education then. Everything was being transferred by the word of mouth. Unfortunately for me, I was late. My father was not there. My mother was not there. My grandfather and grandmother long gone. And even their peers, in terms of the people of their age group, were not there. So it has been really, really tough collecting the information, getting the information and data. Of course, I was able to collect a lot of information, but there are so many missing gaps. There are so many gaps which I'm still continuing to look into that. So I said, thank God I'm writing about myself now, so that my family, my children, my grandchildren, the children of my grandchildren and their children will not have the problem that I have had. But the second thing is, I've been lucky in my short life here on this planet that I've had an opportunity to work for the country. Fortunately or unfortunately, what I have been doing is part and parcel of the history of the country. I've been minister in the various ministries, but to cap it all, I've been president of the country for 10 years. I've been chairman of our ruling party. I've worked in the party. I've worked in the military. I've worked in government. So I felt that if I write about my story, it is also part of the history of the country. So these two things are the reason why, when you told me come and write in city, I said, thank God, I have somebody who cares.
Well, I'm glad you took us up on that. Just to say, I'm looking forward to, seeing the completed book. We've I believe got publishers now, so be expecting it soon. And it's just wonderful to see books on Africa by Africans. So let me just ask you another question. I know we're having conversations with you, and you just mentioned your family a bit on this, but can you just talk a little bit more about your family? It seems to be very, very important to you. You just mentioned right now about how you wanted to tell your family tree. And so could you just talk about your family and maybe your formative years? What was it like? How was your family? How close were you guys? Was it a big tribal family? Was it a big extended family? Or was it the Western nuclear family?
Oh, no. It's so huge. It's a huge Western. You know, I went back about 4 or 5 generations, and so far where I got is somebody called Tamra Misega. Tamra Misega, somebody who migrated from the Zigua people, came to the land of the Wakwere. He got married. And in our tradition then, not now, that when you get married, you have to stay at the in-laws. You have to stay at the in-laws. You have to build a home. Stay there for at least 2 years. 2 seasons where you go to, you work in the farm. It's your own farm. You harvest, but what you harvest, you take them to the house of the father-in-law for 2 seasons. Then I was asking, but why did they have to do this? So essentially, these were farming communities. And if you have a daughter is married to a person who is lazy, she's going to starve. So the best thing is keep him here. Let him prove his wealth, that he can provide for his family. Once you get satisfied that he can provide for his family, then you say, okay, fine, you go. Well, he may choose not to. This great-great-grandfather of ours loved so much the wife, he just decided to stay at his in-laws' place. That's how it started. Then, of course, he gave birth to, he had a son, 2 daughters, 3 daughters, and a son. The son was Kikwete, who is the father of my grandfather. Yeah, so that's how it. Of course, my grandfather was a local chief, a traditional ruler of the area. But it's not the traditional history of how the royal families are developed. He happened to have had education from the Bush schools. They call them Bush schools. The Catholic Church are the ones who established these schools there. The interest of the Catholic Church was really to get converts. So they go there, the catechist teaches them to read and write. But at the same time, they also teach them about the Bible. So they get converts. My grandfather was not converted. My grandfather was not converted. But he had the education. And then during German colonial rule, they created local leaders. Because in our tribe, we are matrilineal. And the matrilineal societies did not have chiefs in our case. And the power is within the clan itself. The Germans found this one to be not good, not effective in terms of running a country. So they had to create their own system. So they appointed people. So among the chiefs, the people they created, they call them akidas. Among the people they created, then they told one of them, you must get somebody who is educated to be writing letters for you, to be writing reports for you. They had wanted one guy who was working with the Catholic Church. He's the one who was doing the education part. But then this man, he went to the pastor, the parrocho. He went there, he said, no, we are so important for our work. Take somebody else. And my grandfather was his childhood friend. They grew up together. So he went to him, told, look here, there is a job for you, guy. Are you ready? He said, yeah, I'm fine. But my grandfather essentially was a blacksmith. He was a blacksmith, and I'm told he was very good at making hoes and axes for the village. So he accepted the job. He went to talk to this guy. He said, I'm not available, but I have a friend who can do the job. So that's how he became a clerk to this ruler created by the Germans. Then, World War I, the Germans lost. The Germans had 4 colonies in Africa. They had Dutch East Africa, which included Tanzania, Tanganyika, Rwanda, and Burundi. They were ruling them together as Dutch East Africa. They had Cameroon, they had Namibia, and they had Togo, only 4 colonies. So after they lost the war, they lost all the colonies. Then Dutch East Africa, that German East Africa, was split. Our part became part of the British. Rwanda and Burundi went to be part of the Belgian Congo. So that's it. So when the British came, they continued that system for some time, and then they created their own system. So when they created their own system, they removed all those authorities created by the Germans. They appointed my grandfather now to be in charge. So that's how my grandfather came to rule the tribe. And he stayed there for a long time. You know, yeah, it is from after World War, he was there until independence. You know, he just became like a royalty. We were like princes. Eh? Somehow. So that's my grandfather, of course. And then my father got at that time there wasn't much of education, but my grandfather was quite keen on education. He started primary schools in his area. Then of course my father got some education. Then the British commissioner also liked him. He took him, gave him a bit of training. And then that's how my father also rose and became a district commissioner, but he did not had formal education. So that's essentially what I can say about my father, and then that's how we benefited from that.
And so I think we have 5 more minutes on this section, but I don't think we can leave this section without asking you about the independence period. So I'm from Ghana. Kwame Nkrumah was Ghana is supposed to be the first sub-Saharan African nation to get independence. Anytime I talk about that time, that era, there was a lot of excitement about Africa. We thought Africa would very quickly industrialize. And of course, from Tanzania, we have Julius Nyerere. And so just wanted to ask you the twin questions in the last 5 minutes we have. What was it like growing up or being around in the independence time? And particularly, what are your views on Julius Nyerere, who for many of us in Africa is one of the top people, definitely in that era of independence?
Yeah, interestingly, most of the traditional rulers opposed Tano. They were on the side of the British. But my grandfather was different. He hosted them. He allowed them to hold meetings. In fact, when they were doing their activism in the village, they would have lunch at my grandfather's place, dinner there. And I used also to enjoy singing. I joined the choir, the Tan Youth League choir that time. And at one point, I think this is the confidence that they had built. Joseph Nyerere, the young brother of Mwalimu Nyerere, who was the Secretary General of the Youth League, came in his visits. He spent a night at my grandfather's house. Contrary to what the British had actually thought. So spent a night. Everybody was curious. Oh, anafanana na Nyerere, and saying that he resembles his brother. So that's the part. And then of course we had a local cultural group where we used to play to dance and say, but the songs also were were pro-independence songs. So that's the part that our family, interestingly, that instead of as the other chiefs, I'll tell you a story. There was a time when, in 1987, after we finished the meeting of the National Executive Committee, I was a member of the National Executive Committee. And then President Nyerere was touring Tanga, Kilimanjaro, and Arusha region. He says, let's go together. So I joined him. We went to a place called Lushoto. In the evening, he used to meet with elders of the party. So at that meeting, then they'll read messages of support and so on, talk about the place. So the person who was reading that message, read it very passionate. After they finished, I was the young guy in the group, so I used to escort them out. Then the Mwalimu told me, after you see them off, come back. So come back. So he said, sit down. I want to tell you one thing. Don't think every old man is a founding member of the party. Sikila mzee ni muasisi. That's what he told me in it. So because you guys think every old man. So the man who was reading that message gave us a lot of problems when we were doing political work, independence work here. Alikuwa Chief Kimweli Mputa Magogo. There was a chief. Then he said, you must know that. But take note of one thing. If you want the country to be stable, get hold of the old people. Work with them. That's my message for you today. Go. So that's the part that during the independence struggle, what my grandfather was doing was extraordinary, out of the ordinary, because this is the way chiefs were behaving. So that's our association. Our association, for me, it was just in the family that I grew up with this pro-independence movement, pro-ruling party affiliation and association. So then we come to independence. Who is this man, Julius Nyerere? He's the father figure. He's the founding father of our nation. A great leader, a great visionary leader. Because one of the things that he was quite careful about, or he had a long vision for, is how to deal with the divisive factors in society. And it's the tribe, it's the race, it's religion, and regionalism within the country. This great man, the first thing he did after independence was to abolish the system of chiefs. Well, I lost because my grandfather was a chief, so. So we lost. We lost. We became commoners. We became commoners. But before that, we were royalties. We were royalties. Of course, not the traditional one, but at least created by the British. And my grandfather was there for over 50 years. Almost. He was there until independence. But it has really helped. So we are so lucky. We are so lucky to have a person like him. The other day, I was invited to Nigeria to talk about, they're looking at how they're working on the issues of how to unify their country, and I was talking about this. And then the other thing that he was quite keen on was on religion. Yeah, because the thing is, it was not, to use proscribe was maybe too strong a word, but it was not allowed to ask the person two questions. What is your tribe? What is your religion? And in any government documentation, this question is not there. This question was not there. So that it made people feel Tanzanians. Of course, we celebrate the diversity, but don't make it as a source of division within the nation. Of course, we had people of different races there. There were us. Assad, where is Assad? Assad is a Tanzanian, but he's of Asian origin. Their great-grandfathers were brought there by the British to build the Uganda Railway. They were eaten by lions in Tsavo. But they remained. They have no country to go. You cannot tell them, go to India, where? They have nowhere. You cannot tell them, go to Pakistan, to where, to whom? They are there. They're just Tanzanians. So he made sure that the issue of race also was not a factor. It was not a factor. So because he started it right from the beginning, it became a norm. It became part of the life of the country. I'm mentioning it in my book. All the things that about my family and all these are issues that I've really discussed them in greater depth and breadth, because this is what has made Tanzania a unified nation. This is what has made Tanzania peaceful. In other countries, it didn't work. Maybe they were late in it, but President Nyerere, right, the first thing he did at independence is no chiefs. Of course, people were saying he's just power monger. He's trying to consolidate power around himself, but they did not see this bigger picture that he was seeing. Those who didn't do it, they now have a lot of problems with regards to tribe and to issues of religion. Of course, so this is the person that I can say about him. That after independence, he's our first president, and he created strong foundations. This is strong foundation. Fortunately for us then, the successive generations of leaders after him did not tamper with this foundation. Because you could get some crazy guy, he could just tamper with it, puncture it, and you'll have the consequences. You'll have the consequences. So this is what I can say about Julius Nyerere, the person, well, I admire so much. I have strong love for him.
Excellent. And that is one of the great things about Tanzania, how peaceful it is, how cohesive it is. And I think this whole question about chiefs, so my home country, Ghana, we kept our chiefs. Kwame Nkrumah wanted to abolish them, but he couldn't. And so the Ashanti, we are also matrilineal, we have our chiefs. Next door, Nigeria, Professor Ofiong Akwa, they sort of kept their tribal identities and even wrote it in the Constitution. And there's some people who believe that the problems in Nigeria are because of exactly that if Nigeria had done what Tanzania had done, who knows? Rwanda today have abolished, I think they've done the same thing Nyerere did. So this is a big question for Africa. Kenya as well, yeah, had problems, big problems in Kenya because the tribes were still, identified as tribes. Let's move to the next section. And many Africans, when you speak to them, the young people, I'm sure when I was younger, I was exactly the same way. as a young boy, if you ask me, what do I want to do? I'd say, I want to be president of Ghana. That's what all the kids say today, right? Most of us, of course, never make it anywhere close to that. You did. How did you do it? What was the special, how did you become president? How does one do that? Maybe you can give me the formula. I'll try in Ghana again.
Well, one, I never had the ambition. I never had the ambition of becoming president. My personal interest has been working for the party, which I was lucky that I was able to get it, and I've written in my book how I got employed to the party. The other was the military. These two things which, fortunately, then through the party I was able also to get into the military. I never had these big ambitions of becoming a politician. But then one day, in 1988, at that time I was a secretary of the party in a district called Masasi. Prior to that, I was in Nachingwea, where I met my dear wife. Then I was transferred to Masasi. But the party had created a system of, within the National Executive Committee, they wanted young people. They allocated 5 seats at the beginning. 90 members, 5 could go to be young people. I was active in the youth movement. So we agreed that let me contest. Another friend of mine, Azan Al-Jabri, now late, contested. Then I was elected overwhelmingly. I became a member of the National Executive Committee of CCM. That was 1982, the first time I was elected. And, well, I continued to be elected every 5 years. Then, of course, I moved from the youth with the age. Then I joined the elders group. So that's the thing, that's the farthest. I was not even interested in contesting the parliamentary seat. So one day in 1988, we went to a meeting of the National Executive Committee in Dodoma. That's where the seat was. And then I come back to Dar es Salaam. But of course, at Dodoma, the Prime Minister then, Joseph Warioba, asked me a question. When are you going back? I told him I have plans for, I think that was a Thursday. I said I have plans for leaving on Saturday. I said, are you sure? Yes, I'm sure. I leave on Saturday. Okay, fine. Then he asked me again, are you sure? I said, okay. The Prime Minister interested in whether I'm going back to my place or not. Then I decided to run away from him. So then I got a lift from one of our senior leaders, Alfred Tandao. He's now late, from Dodoma to Dar es Salaam. On Saturday, I was going to leave on Sunday, but on Saturday, I went to the airline to confirm my ticket. They told me the flight has been cancelled. Then I was saying, to cancel a flight, even the Prime Minister is informed, because this man was always asking me whether I would be going or not going. So I think because they had made already a decision for me for the appointment, so he was just confirming so that they don't get the trouble of me going back to my rural areas and then to be called back. So then I go to the CCM office to tell them that my flight has been cancelled. I'm going to leave on Monday. Then there was somebody there called Habi Gunze, working with the press secretary to the Prime Minister. He said, oh, let's go. The Prime Minister wants to see you. So we go there. I said, what is there? So we go there, and we are told, oh, the Prime Minister He's resting. You could come back. He's going to see off Buyoya of Burundi, President Buyoya, and then after that you come back. So I went to see a football match at Ilala Stadium. Then came back to the CCM offices. Then the watchman there said they've been calling here every other minute to confirm if you are there. I said, oh, poor boy, what have I done? Poor me, what is it that have I done? The Prime Minister is always trying to tag me. Then, of course, they called me, they got me. I said, oh, are you there? He said, yes. Is there any car there? I said, no, the car that was there was the car of the Secretary General of the party, Rashid Kawab, top heavy. He says, okay, let's say. So let's talk to the driver. They talk to the driver. Then the driver says, let's go. So, you know, it was such an honor to get a ride on the personal car of the Prime Minister, of the Secretary General of the party, who was former Vice President, Prime Minister. So I go and see the Prime Minister. Then I talk to him. He said, but at that time I had initiated a program of growing cassava in one of the districts, because one of the problems we have had there was recurrent hunger and famine. But then I saw the answer is growing cassava. So at times we are doing some underhand methods of trying to help them to grow the crop. So I thought that was going to be the reason. So he asked me a question, how about the program is going? He said, the program is fine, we only need seedlings. So okay, fine, we'll help you get that. So he said, I guess, when are you going back? I said, I'm going back on Monday now. I said, okay, fine. What time in a Monday? He said, in the morning. I said, okay, fine. Can't you leave the night? Can you change your schedule? He said, no. I have a program already set. I'm visiting my villages. Mobilization. He said, no, I can't change. Then he had said, oh, please, you have just canceled. The president wants to see you on Monday. It's okay, fine. Then I thought, no, I said, there's no problem. What I will do, I said, okay, fine, don't worry. I'll send somebody to the airport to check in. See the president, and after seeing him, rush to the airport, proceed. Then the Prime Minister says, please, forget it. Just wait. Wait for the president. So I go and see on Monday, I go and see the president. He tells me, and of course he was asking me a question about what I wanted to say at the National Executive Committee, because this was the meeting where we took the formal decision on economic reforms. On economic reforms, because, at that time, all these major decisions are taken by the party. So this is when we said, okay, fine, we are now going, we said let the government go ahead with taking the IMF dose of structural, IMF World Bank structural adjustment program. So, okay, fine. I said, no, I wanted to say, no, don't worry about that. That's because I was so nervous. Then he said, are you member of parliament? I said, I'm not. I've appointed you member of parliament. I said, oh, thank you. But when I said thank you, my idea was I'm a member of the National Executive Committee. We have 4 meetings per annum. And if I become a member of parliament, another 4 meetings. So at least I will have 8 days, 8 times to travel from my rural area. Let me come back, go Dar es Salaam, Dodoma, that would be fine. And then come back. So he said, I'm appointing you. I said, I want you to go to the Ministry of Energy and Minerals to assist Arnold Kasum. Arnold Kasum was the minister. So I'll assist to do what? It's a deputy minister. I said, no, the parliament is fine, but the deputy minister, I don't think is fine. He says, you are young, bright, you'll be able to manage. He just closes another chapter. I said, go. So I left. So I left. And then I come out, I was sweating, you know. The private secretary, Mahmoud Jabir at that time, was asking, why are you sweating? I said, what he told me, I'm here to comprehend. Then I asked him questions, he said, just go home, rest, wait for the announcement. So I went back home, and then a friend of mine came. So we went around. I was going to the home, of course, our father's house, but my sister was staying there. My sister found me to be not normal. She said, but you don't look the same today. I said, no, I'm fine, sister. Then a friend came, so he took me, we were driving around. Then we visited a friend of mine, the lady Topile. When we were there, his wife comes and says, congratulations. So this friend of mine was driving me and said, congratulations for what? So I said, no, I didn't tell you. They told me that I'm going to be a deputy minister. So, but I've been driving you for several hours. Why didn't you tell me? I said, look, it's not my business to say. So that's really how I got conscripted into politics. I can really say it's by conscription. Then after that, and that's 1988, November 1990, the president dissolves government. We went there for a very brief meeting, 5 minutes. He says, okay, fine. Oh, thank you very much for working with me. I want all of you to go and resign. So we look at each other. What is this? Interesting. I'm telling you a very, very funny story. So we come out with my minister. Then the minister asks me, because he says, the Swahili Zanzibar Swahili is a bit complicated. What did he say? The president says we should all resign. Even the prime minister say, I guess so. But the most interesting part has been because when you go to a cabinet meeting, then the driver drops you there, and he goes, and of course you tell the driver go home and start going to do a bit of chores in the market and so on, get groceries. So we all allowed our cars to go. This is a very brief meeting. We come out there, and the cars are not there. So I'm telling you a practical story. So when you read the book, you'll find some of these stories very interesting. So then what do we do? Fortunately, the Minister of Finance was nearby. So we work with at that time, Samsuya, we worked to the ministry. We are so lucky it was not the time of the mobile phone and the social media. It would have gone viral. Taking pictures of ministers walking out of the State House after being told to resign. So then after this, we stayed there for about 4 or 5 days. There was no news. Then I become minister. I become the minister in the same ministry. My minister said, did you know? I said, I didn't know. So of course I was younger than he was. He was a freedom fighter. So then I became a minister. This was 1990. And then that same year, it's elections, the general elections. So comes the general elections. Now what do I do? And for us, it's the Westminster model. You have to be a member of parliament to be a minister. Then I had to look for a constituency because I cannot wait for the favors of the president anymore. Yeah. He says, I've helped you. Well, help yourself now. So then, of course, I talked to my father, and we talked, and then we zeroed in on the constituency, where in the district where I was born. Well, so I've told a long story, but this is how then I came to join politics full time. as I was saying, it's not by design, it's just by default. Then I found myself there, and then I liked it. That's it. I liked it. And then come 1995, President Mwinyi finishes his term of office, and the system in the party had changed. Now it's people volunteer, because in the old system, the Central Committee sits and decides Kikwete becomes president. But then it became open. Then, because we had first the economic reforms, which divested the economy from a socialist one to a market-based economy. And then this president took up another reform, the political reform, from a single-party democracy to a multi-party system. And in the multi-party system, they opened it up now. It's not the party sitting down and saying, Yao is our candidate. No. People volunteer. Then, I was Minister of Finance at that time. People go and pick the forms. I was not interested. Then, I've written something. At that time, President Nyerere wanted me to, of course, he had already retired. But there is somebody he wanted to be president. And he wanted me to partner in trying to influence this guy to take up the form. So we strategized. He says, I trust you, young. I sent you my son. Okay, fine. Go and talk to him. Then I went to talk to him. He refused. So then I came back. I was traveling. I was going to Kuwait, to meet Kuwait Fund. We met with this man somewhere in Nairobi. And then I came back. I called him. I said, I've spoken to him. He has refused. I said, okay, fine. He says, now, he asked me, how do we go from here? I said, I don't know. So I left. At that time, I was working on my budget speech. Very tense time, looking at the numbers, tax rates, and so on, government revenues, how are we going to do this, and then what's going to be the deficit, and then how are we going to cover that one? What are the revenue measures that you're going to take in order to be able to cover the revenue gaps? So I was busy. And then I get a call. I was working in the office. It was about around 8 p.m. and then I get a call from my president. President Mwinyi calls me. Says the president wants you there. Well, so I go and see him. Well, how are you? I say, I'm fine, sir. Usual shikamoo mzee, marhaba. Mambo vipi? I say, mambo yanakwenda vizuri. The things are fine. I'm busy now. I think the numbers are getting there. We should have a budget for you, sir. I said, okay, that's good. Then how about picking the forms? I said, which forms? I said, you don't know the forms that people are picking now? I said, you mean the presidential forms? I said, yes. I said, no, I'm not interested. I said, okay. You're not interested. Why? So, well, it's a question of interest. I'm not interested. They said, just go and pick them up. I said, look here. We are left with only 1 week. And in that 1 week, you have to go and get signatures of 250 people in 10 regions. Say, look here, President, I'm a Minister of Finance now. I have to deliver a budget for you, and it's only 1 week to the budget. If I've got to leave doing that work, there is going to be no budget. It's going to be a constitutional crisis. It's not going to be, it's going to be a constitutional crisis. He said, just go there, pick it, the young people will circulate the form. Then we had discussions and we didn't agree. But he said later, he said, you see, look here, go and pick the form. Mwalimu was here. President Nyerere was here. We discussed and we discussed you. And we agreed, go and pick the form. I just laughed. I said, you can't be serious, sir. I said, just go and pick the form. So then I went back to the office. I go back to the office. I think the president realized that I was not convinced. So he sent a friend of mine, Abraman Kinana. He's a guy, he's a fellow military guy. I think the two of us there in the uniform, the one who is taller than me. He was Minister of Defense at that time. So he comes to the office, he tells me, have you been to the president? I said no. Because look here, me seeing my president is none of his business. I said no. Are you sure? I said, you are asking me and I didn't go, so don't bother about me. I think the mistake he did, I think he was told to come and convince me, but the way he started it made me say no. Then he failed. Then he said, okay, if you went or didn't go, but what you have been told, take it seriously. So he left. So he left. So I continued my working on my speech. I think I went home late, about, I think, past 11 p.m. Then I slept. And then in the morning, 3 friends came. Then I think my son came and said, Daddy, you have visitors. So I come down. Yeah, let's find these 3 guys there. Yeah, they said, how are you? Fine. What is it that brought you here? I said, okay, fine, okay. We want you and my friend now, Edward, Loasa, we want the 2 of you to go. The speaker now, the spokesperson there was Samuel Sita. Was the elder brother of ours, at that time he was still a minister. He says, well, we have come down and said to you and Edward, you must go and pick the forms to become president for the presidency. So I told him, look, I'm not interested. Edward is interested, tell him to go and pick the form. He also says, let's go together. We argued until I found this. Yesterday I had a problem with this, with this old man. My boss, now here are friends of mine, now are causing a lot of problems. They called, okay, fine, let's go. I said, because at the end of the day, the choice is going to be mine, whether I'm going to return the form or not. So they organized. But before we left, then Sita suggested, now let's go and see President Nyerere. I asked him, are you sure that he's in town? He said, oh, he's in town. So we go there. He comes down. He asks me, Jakaya, you brought so many people today. What happened? Because I used to go there from time to time. I said, no, it's not me. Ask this elder brother of ours. And Samuel Sita tells the president Nyerere that, we have talked to these young people. They are now ready to go and pick the forms. The president Nyerere said, no, now we have elections. That's what he said. So we left. And then he called me back as we left. He asked me, has the president told you? I said, yes, he told me. Okay, fine, go. And then after that, come back. So that's how I just got into the business in 1995. Again, by conscription. Again, by conscription. So we go there, we start the process. Then we came back. It was organized, and then there were trucks already there. They traveled. Some went along the Mbeya Road, others the northern corridor, others Samuel Sukwa said Sukwa crossed into Zanzibar Islands and Pemba Islands. In 3 days, all the forms were filled. They filled the forms and I was given the forms. Your forms here are your forms. So I said, this is big conspiracy. Then we had to take them to Dodoma, the Secretary General. We had to ask the Secretary General to accept us, receive the forms in Dar es Salaam, because if I had to go to Dodoma, I would not be able to read the budget. They understood my position, then they said, okay, fine, we send them. Okay, so that's how it started, and I was not quite keen. Then everybody else, there were 11 of us. No, 17. There were 17 of us. Everybody else who had picked the forms was crisscrossing the country, mobilizing support. I was in Dar es Salaam. But I was Minister of Finance. I just can't go anywhere. If I had to leave, then there will be no budget. And then it's going to be a bigger crisis. People asked me, are you interested? I said, more or less. I went to the Finance Committee of Parliament. And they said, oh, President, we come there, rice. I said, no, I'm not serious about that. He said, if you are not serious, we are serious. And I said, this is going to be a serious matter. So, and then we had, at that time, we had two stages. The first stage is the party sits down, does a short list of 5. My hope was that in that list of 5, I'll not be there. I thought because there are 2 young people, it was me and Edward Lowassa. So I thought definitely because my friend has had a lot of interest and doing a lot of mobilization and organization. And everybody else was saying, Edward. I thought I would not be there. So we come there to the meeting. First, one interesting thing, let me tell you. I was Minister of Finance. As Minister of Finance, when we come to Dodoma for Parliament, we do not have a residence. We used to use the rest house of the National Insurance Corporation. So I went there. When I went there, I was told there is somebody else there. One of the presidential candidates, who the chairman of the board of National Insurance was supporting, put him there. So I had no place to go. Okay, fine. I went to my deputy minister, Simai Pandu. He's now late. I went, I told him, look here, I went to that house of the minister. There is somebody there. Then please, let's share. Deputy minister said, oh, minister, you are my minister. Don't worry. I'm going to the hotel. You stay here. So he left the house for me. Otherwise, I think those guys, the chairman of the board thought I was not going to make it, so he just put the person he thought is going to be president. So we go to the meeting in the afternoon. They say, no, the meeting is going to be tomorrow. Then I met somebody called John Komba. He's late now. He says, oh, just go. If it is 5, you will be among the 5. If it is 3, you will be among the 3. We are in charge. I say, oh boy, this is just going to be. So then we go. I go home, spend the night there. Virtually, I did not have a group. I don't have a group. So we go to the meeting. Then the Central Committee has met. The Central Committee comes there to announce the names. In the list of 5, I was there. And then the National Executive Committee votes. I was the smallest, the youngest there. Because in the list there was Joseph Warioba, there was Pius Msekwa, Cleopa Msuya, Benjamin Mkapa, and me. I was the smallest. I was the kid in the block there. So we vote. you vote to remain with 3. They do the voting. I was among the 3. Then I began to see, now this thing is going to be serious. And then because at that time, after that, then there was a lead time, so that people could go around the regions to solicit support. I did not go. As I was saying, my work was so difficult. And then I think there was time I did Mwanza, Musoma, and Bukoba, just to satisfy my friends that at least I am serious. Then I had to pretend that I'm serious. Then we went there. Then the Congress comes, the national conference of the party. We go there for voting. The first round, I won the first round. And I said, oh, this thing is going to be a problem now. Then, I had really to start thinking to be presidential then, And so the rumor had it that you have won. So we came there. Then I told, no. They have sit down and they discussed in the Central Committee. They agreed that it's not a question of simple majority. It has got to be absolute majority. Because the original idea was simple majority, then you are candidate. They said, no, for a big position like this one, we don't want to have candidates and then you have someone who becomes the first, but he has only 30%, 35%. And the others have to say, no. So then they went to the second round. The second round, President Mkapa won. I was relieved. I took to the podium. I asked to go and speak. They did not know what I was going to speak. And I went there. I said, I'm supporting the president, President Mkapa. The words I used was the military language now. We have won the battle, but not the war. The war has just started. Let us all rally around our candidate. So that's really how I got conscripted into this thing. And then, of course, after 1995, after my position, my performance to be good, then I became to like becoming president. then I got the feel of it. That's why I waited 10 years, and after 10 years, and then I got a lot of support. I got a lot of support, and because I went there, came up, supported him, and then people said, you are an exceptional young man. And of course, when I was speaking there, supporting then President Nyerere stood from his chair. He came and hugged me. He says, my son, you have done so beyond my expectation. Because naturally, people would have expected that we had won the first round, and then it would have been hell let loose. Then but I was composed. I said, I support him. It's our party. Now we have won the battle of getting a candidate. We finished. The next stage is to fight it out against the opposition and win the presidency. So that's why I've spoken so long, because you wanted me to talk about this. But this is how I became a politician. As I am saying, it's not by choice. Essentially, it is by maybe there was something in me. Maybe there was something in me that I can be a president. I never saw myself being a presidential material, but maybe others saw me, and well, then I got the opportunity to serve my country for 10 years. Yeah, very long. Well, it's there in the book.
It's all in the book.
It's more detailed there.
All right, so maybe just to mix it up a little bit, maybe if there's some people who want to ask a question, just come up to the podium. We have 2 mics on the side there, so if you want to ask a question, please do that. And while people are getting their questions ready, there you go. All right, just go ahead. Whoever's there first.
So a very interesting story, and I would like to ask the question, as Minister of Finance, what difference did it make for you to become president? Because I don't think there are many African presidents who have the Minister of Finance background.
Minister of Finance, President.
Go ahead.
Mr. President, shikamo. From your narrative and from the little I know of you, you're not a follower, but a saint of Mwalimu. One of the pillars that Mwalimu left us was the Arusha Declaration. And I'll just take a strand of what Mwalimu's legacy was when it comes to Arusha Declaration. It had to do with ethics and accountability, uwajibikaji na maadili. Can you speak to that and what you saw during your time in government, as well as where we're headed right now? Thank you very much.
The first question is, how does the Minister of Finance become president? Because it has never happened anywhere. Oh, it's been difficult. Well, I did not appoint myself to be Minister of Finance. I don't know what prompted the president to think I can be a good Minister of Finance. But I became Minister of Finance at a time when it was a bit tumultuous for the country. The donors were not happy with us, and change had to be made. I took over from a professor of economics, and I only have one degree of economics. This one was a professor, but I was given that task. And my primary function there was to restore confidence and trust with the donors. But my biggest challenge was that they had decided to suspend aid to Tanzania, and how do we survive? Then we had to become innovative and creative. We came up with the cash budget system. I introduced that we will spend not more than what we earned last month. It became so difficult for everybody. Well, but that's it. From finance, I moved to foreign affairs. Then I was facing the problems of the cash budget. I go to the Minister of Finance, please. I have embassies to run, I have SSS, but sir, you created this system yourself. I said, okay, fine. Well, as I said, I cannot really say how I became president, whether because I was Minister of Finance or Minister of Foreign Affairs, but I see myself as the 1995 my reaction in 1995 event, I think, is what made me an heir apparent from that day. There was a lot of sympathy that he should have been, but somehow just be calm. Thank you for the way you have behaved. Well, they did not know behind it. In my heart, I was so relieved, because at that time, I was actually not prepared to become president, honestly. If I became president that time, it would have been disaster for the country, because I was not psychologically prepared. But in 2005, then I was prepared. And the 10 years gave me a lot of time to think about the country, to think about the issues, that if I become president, this is something. Everything I was seeing, I was observing. Every country that I was traveling to as foreign minister, there are important things that I was noting. That if I become president, this thing is going to be useful for us. If I become this, so it really, the period between 1995 and 2005, for me was really preparing myself for the presidency. That's the advantage that I have. So I came 2005 prepared to become president of the country, with my own thinking, with my own views on what I'm going to do on what. So that's the difference. So I said I may not be. I don't think I've answered you. I've answered the way I think I should answer, but that's it. That's all that I can say. Well, the Arusha Declaration I'm also discussing that in the book. You know, the Arusha Declaration was about socialism. And socialism is about communal ownership, state ownership. And in the words of President Nyerere, the commanding heights of the economy are in the hands of the state. You don't have to be a capitalist. You don't have to be a feudalist. Landlords are feudalists. So we had a code of ethics that was to meet these nationalities. So for a leader, one of the conditionalities is that you should not be a shareholder in a private company. You should not own a house you are renting out. Then come 1986, and the firm decision taken in 1988 to liberalize the economy. Move away from the command economy, go into the market economy. People were allowed to become shareholders. People were allowed to build houses and rent them out. But the system was no longer socialist. So you cannot have a market economy and have leadership conditionalities that are socialist. They're contradiction in terms. So, but the major issues of ethics, not being corrupt, and so on and so on, these transcend socialism and capitalism. But the issue that the leadership conditions of Azimio Arusha were about promoting socialism, and these are the things that had to be changed, because we had agreed that we are now transforming the system. We are privatizing the state institutions. And there was a whole department established for that. Parastatal Sector Reform Commission. And their task was divest the economy. So I think that there are things that people have got to see what the basis of Barefoot that. But it did not mean that people can continue to be corrupt, people can steal, people can, no. It was not about that. What was transformed was the basic issues that are related to socialism. This is what was changed. But otherwise, the major ethics, because we have an ethics commission with a commissioner, we have the anti-corruption squad, bureau, to deal with those issues. So the issues of ethics, for leadership, for everybody, did not go with the diversity with the transformation of the economy from being a command economy to a market economy. No, it did not change. So there are basics. Of course, now with the market economy, then you have got to look on to how it is done. If you become president, and you're still doing with the economic, you cannot use your offices to take advantage. So that is where now you have this specific leadership code which has to take care of this kind of aspects. So people should not confuse that. The changes, the Arusha Declaration code was about promoting socialism. When you have divested the economy, you have changed the economy, but it does not mean that now there are no ethical issues or important ethical issues to deal with. No, it's not. That's not the case. People have got to abide by ethical codes, and they are there, spelled in black and white.
I think the time is slowly moving. So let me just ask you to tell us a little bit about life after the presidency. What's on your mind, maybe a little bit about your foundation, and in particular, this is the part which is sometimes great for me and sometimes a little bit terrifying. So His Excellency came here, and he had to write his book. And I was in the very interesting position where I actually had to ask him, every Friday, show me your work. Because I'm the professor now, you are the student. It was just amazing. So, Your Excellency, how's that book coming, and when should we expect the final product to be graded?
So, there are two things here. Life after the presidency and when the book is coming. Okay, fine. Let me talk about both. Well, life after the presidency is great. This is what I can say with honesty. One, I have reclaimed my freedom to some extent. The security detail is minimized, but they're always there. I will always have them, because one thing I was told one day, my chief of my security at that time was saying, look here, sir, we will always be there with you. During the presidency, after the presidency, and even after death. Because we will always be there to look after your grave. You can imagine if somebody goes there and exhumes the body of the president, it's going to be a national crisis. So he said the levels will differ. When you are president, Oh, there'll be everybody at every door. But with the presidents, they are here with me. They know how they work. So that's one thing. It is easy for me now to visit friends. Because in the past I was told, because at times, you get information that so-and-so is in a hospital. So now I have got to go and see him. They say, if you tell them I want to go to the hospital, I say, fine, give us 2 hours. That's the minimum. Because they've got to line up people. The police have got to be there. Everybody has got to be told. The road has to be cleared for the president to pass. Now I don't have that problem. now I don't have that problem. But at least there will be somebody where I'm going. He will be there before me. That's it. That's the normal. But it is not as strict as that. So I've done. But now I do the things that I want to do. When you are president, you do the things that others want you to do. Don't think that the president is so big. The president is so huge in office. But there are people who dictate what the president is going to do. And there are people who decide, you're going to do this thing, no. Before the close of the day, they'll bring you a timetable for tomorrow. What is the program for tomorrow? This and this and this. But but this is too many. But sir, we've already informed them. So it's a highly regimented life, regimented, and there are people who are in control, and it's not the president. At times, of course, you can put your foot down. I don't want to see this one. They try to convince you, and then if they see you put your foot down, they say, okay, fine, sir, I will tell him. How you tell him, I don't know. I don't know. But essentially, it's that kind of. Now I do the things that I choose to do. Of course, I have had a lot of interest in agriculture, coming from the rural areas, coming from the village, growing up. So I have a lot of interest in agriculture. So I've been growing pineapples. Because from my mother's side, they grow pineapples. I have developed interest for keeping cattle, which essentially in our tribe, we are not cattle keepers. That's one strange thing. But my grandfather was interested in cattle. Maybe I got that gene from him. I love cattle, amazingly. But our tribe, essentially, when growing up, a cattle is just like cattle are just like any kind of wildlife. And when you see a cow coming, you try to run away so that it may kill you. But I've done it. So these are my main preoccupation, and I spend a lot of time in my farms. Now I've started growing papaya. There is somebody who came to me and talked to me a lot about papaya. I said, okay, fine, I'm going to do it. So I'm starting with 3 acres of papaya, and then let's see if it does well, then I can get bigger than that. So that's essentially what keeps me busy at home. Of course, I've started my foundation, and in the foundation, I'm looking at issues of interest to me, maternal and child health. This has been my preoccupation when I was president. Of course, child health, maternal health. Child health, I lost a few of my siblings. And my younger brother, I was born in 1950. The younger brother who was born in 1952, Ramadhani, died of malaria. He was my playmate. I think when he died, you know, and you know at that time when you are young, you're not told. It's just, I think I was 4 years old. So I always keep asking my mother, where is Ramadan? When is he going to come back? I think tormented my mother so much. And then of course, there was a time also I almost lost my mother. You know, she had complications during birth of one of the children. She lost the child, but she was in terribly bad shape. And that time my father was working in Pangani. My mother came to my grandfather, because I stayed with my grandfather for a long time. From 1950, from when I was age 6, they relocated me to my grandfather. Yeah. It was my grandfather who wanted me to go there, to stay with him. For what purpose, I don't know. So then mother came there, and you know, she was agonizing. You know, when she came, I was so happy that my mother is coming. But she was coming in great pains, a tired night, groaning, agonizing. I was no longer the happy boy. Because every time I come from school, go to see my mother first, how are you? Then go to play. Every time I go back and see my mother, it was really very traumatizing for me. I thought almost I'm going to lose my mother. But then, of course, she came through. Well, no, but of course, when I became president, before I became president, I formed 2 teams after being a nominated candidate. There was a team under Professor Mukandala, who was the vice chancellor. He just retired. And in that team I had economists and all these others. And then I had a team under Professor Palanjo, who was the vice chancellor of the medical school. Professor Palanjo and I were classmates. He went into the sciences, I went into the social sciences. And then natural sciences, great in mathematics, biology, chemistry, everything. Professor Palanjo was working on advisory on health issues. And there was Professor Mkandala, there was Dr. Bukuku, and the others. They were looking at the economic and other issues. So the health team came up with a very graphic explanation of the state of health in the country. And in summary, what they were saying, what was needed there is a major intervention, like the one that President Mkapa had taken on primary education development. That time famous in MEM. Mpango wa maendeleo ya elimu ya msingi. So he said, if short of a major intervention like that one, will not be able to transform the health sector. So they came up with a list of the areas of challenges. One of them, too many people are dying of malaria. There are too many people dying of HIV/AIDS. Mothers and children who are dying of causes which can be prevented, and diseases that can be cured. So this is the advice the advice I got from those 2 teams actually helped me a lot in navigating and guiding the country in the 10 years that I was president. So we had a major intervention on malaria. We launched a huge program. We're working with an American NGO, Malaria No More. We launched that program, a major one. Malaria haikubaliki. Malaria is not acceptable. We launched a huge campaign. We brought in all our artists to join into the campaign, and it has been quite successful. Infection rates came down by 51%. Death rate among children under 5 came down by 71%. Of course, we had the major interventions of the artemether combination therapy, the bed nets, insecticide-treated bed nets, indoor residual spraying, the 3 interventions that have been quite effective. And then, of course, we came with the HIV campaign. And there is no cure. There is no prevention yet. What do? It's just sensitization. But we say the first thing we should do is counseling and testing. I spoke to the US ambassador at that time. I said, look here, I want to do a nationwide counseling and testing program here, campaign. If you say that you are going to help me with the test kits, I'll announce it. The US ambassador said, say it. So that's why I think in 2007, when we had the National AIDS Day in Musoma, I announced next year, we're going to launch a nationwide campaign of counseling and testing, which we did. My wife and I did the campaign. We were tested in front of television cameras live. They could see my veins easily, but my wife, because I'm feeding her well, so they could not see her veins properly. Yeah, but I really felt sorry for her. They had to pinch this place, another one, until they were able to get the vein. But we did that. On that day, we had 11,000 people coming at the Mnazi Mmoja Square testing. And after that, it became a normal thing now. Counseling and testing became normal. We were able to reduce the stigma. And by the time I left, I think over 30 million people had tested. Infection rates for HIV, we were able to attain the MDG for that. Of course, we launched a big campaign on maternal and child health. We were successful with under 5. We were able to meet the AMDG for that, but we failed far short on maternal mortality rates. We were supposed to get to 191. When we came in, it was 580. We brought down to 454, came down to 432, I think. We left it there. So we said, this is unfinished business. Let the others now take it up. So this is how I came to take interest in some of the things that I did. But on retirement, of course, you mentioned it. I was with Prime Minister Halper on the women and children. So I said, okay, fine. In my foundation, let me focus on maternal and child health. Let me continue the work on that one. Of course, we are also looking at young people. Our focus in the foundation on young people is mentorship and entrepreneurship training. Because that's the area that we think if young people can come up with ideas, they can be mentored by experienced people, and if we succeed to create a venture fund that is going to underwrite the projects that they have themselves, it will certainly help ease the unemployment problem. They will be employed. They can also employ the others. So, but also, we'll have at least young people with a lot of energy who are gainfully occupied. If they are not gainfully occupied, it's a crowd that is ready to be rented. So it all depends upon who rents them for what. Somebody can rent them for some bad things. So and then, of course, we are looking at the smallholder farmers. It's another area of interest for me. So that's it. So I can say that the president has been, the post-presidency has not been as busy as you've been trying to make it. I've been doing a lot of things, but they don't compare to the heavy burden that you shoulder when you are president. It does not. Not even 1/10 of that. 1/10 of that. I'm doing a lot of things, but more leisurely atmosphere. I choose what to do when. That's it.
So thank you very much. And maybe we will sit here, and I'm going to call up our board member, Africa House board member, Eddie Bergman. I think you're going to come and give us some remarks up here. Okay, so just come right up. We'll take...
Well, thank you so much, Your Excellency. This has been one of the most interesting discussions and symposiums that I've sat through, and I think that NYU Africa House has hosted. Real stories, real, genuine, hear it as it is. And I think that this is such a unique opportunity for all of us, and I think for the world to hear from such an amazing leader. And we're so grateful. And the question that I have, actually, if it's okay, is when the book is published, and I assume that's happening shortly, I hope that we can find a way to concurrently publish it in Swahili. I'd like for perhaps Your Excellency, if you can comment on that, because I think that the people of your country, I think you're a man of the people. And from the time that I've spent in Tanzania, people have so much respect for you, and I think particularly because they connect with you, and your story and your and the way that you share it, you're so humble, you're modest, but you connect, and you make us all feel like we're the president also. And I think that that's such a unique characteristic, but in particular in Africa, it's something that I think that this should only spread. And now in America, we also need those little bit of this dose of values. So thank you for coming here to bring that to us.
Well, let me react to that. Of course, I've taken note of that. Because it's NYU that started with the project, then it is in English. Mm-hmm. But we have started again. As I finish the chapters, there are people who are also doing the translation. So my expectation is that when the book was finished, the English and the Swahili would be finished at the same time, simultaneously, so that we'd be able to launch them together. Of course, the English will be launched here at NYU. Well, you said when it come back. Of course, the issue now is how to publish it, but I'm working and you continue working, and then we'll see how far we'll get on that one. Yeah, so I'm taking care of that. Thank you for showing concern.
Great, thank you. So I have some formal remarks, but I think that I would just conclude the program by thanking NYU Africa House for hosting this session. Your Excellency, thank you so much for all of the time that you've spent here in New York at NYU. It's been a journey over the last, I think, 13 years, where you have really have built a second home here at NYU, and it's such an honor. First as a student, when I think I reached out and connected with the late Ambassador Makawago, and I'm grateful for those people you referred to who put things on your schedule. And I'm grateful for you not saying, "Who's this? Get rid of that." I think that's how the relationship originally started. And somehow you have a unique ability to see and look at the schedule and say, that's interesting. Let's let's follow up on that, and then get the right people in place, and then just make it happen. And one thing leads to the next. And there's not, during the time you were president, there was not one Africa-related program, not only in New York, but anywhere in the world that was taking place where President Kikwete was not felt, or your presence was not there. Somehow you managed to be a hero and a leader at home. Always, I recall my time in Tanzania, reading the local paper. Wherever there was an issue, you were there. But somehow, all over the world, you managed to have a presence also. And the values of hard work, the values of doing things for the people, the values of, I think that we learned about today, which of your upbringing, all came out during those years. And now in your post-presidency, the example that you set for the rest of the African continent and the world of what it can be like and how wonderful it is post-presidency, and the values of democracy that are so important for this world and for leaders. And we can only wish you all the best, and please continue to do more, because it was very interesting what you said about the security. And while it was, I think we all laughed a little bit about the security that will continue on for the rest of your life. I think you have a long, long way to go until, and that was actually quite interesting what you said. But you have many, many, many years ahead of you to do such amazing work. And it's truly an honor to be part of just a little piece of that here at NYU, and to have been part of a little bit of that story. So thank you, and thank you to Yao and to your team. And I think perhaps you can just, I think it's Kingsley and Andrea and the rest of the team, and what a connection with Sangaya and the students here at NYU. So anyway, thank you, and yeah, I hope that was a good way to close. So thanks.
Before Yao concludes, let me again say how grateful I am, Madam Deputy Provost, to NYU for supporting me, for working with me every step of the way in this project, for Professor Yao for pushing me to do this, but also for the things that he did after you gave me wonderful accommodation. Yeah, I felt quite comfortable, but also to make available to me a team of 3 people. Kingsley, Kingsley, yes, yeah. And Assad. These are the people who are doing the recording. I'm doing the speaking. I'll be the talking, the record. They are the laptops. They're very fast typewriter. People who they type very fast. I really wonder how they do it. And then we had Andrea. Andrea was the person who was making it happen. From the background, taking care of all the administrative work to make sure that everything was in place. So I really would like to thank the university, Africa House, Kingsley, Assad. Assad is a fellow countryman. I'm praying for Kingsley for his future in Ghana. I have said nothing. But also, I thank you so much, Andrea. You have been wonderful people. You know, you have really made my life easy. You have really made my work go smoothly. Of course, we had to interrupt the work because my father-in-law got critically ill. I had to rush home to join my wife and the family, because unfortunately, after 10 days, the old man passed on. But he was lucky. He died at the age of 107. You know, it's amazing. Yes. Well, so, you know, we in Africa mourn a lot for a long time. Eh? So we lost almost one and a half months of our work. This is what I'm going now to recover after here, and then after the next by 2 months, everything will be in place, and then we have to start working on publishing the work. If we can succeed, really, my wish is come January next year, we should have the book in place. Yes. I hope we'll be able to get a publisher, get the money to publish, because the publishers are there. They need to be paid. That's all. They need to be paid. But I've started working on it. I've not left it in the hands of the university alone. I've started working on it. I've been talking to people. And some are responsive, some are not yet. But if I lock in on something very specific, I'll come back to you. Yeah, I'll come back to you, Provost, and tell you that now we have the book. Otherwise, right at the present, we have the ideas and the manuscripts. Do we have the book yet? We need the money to publish it, and I think we hopefully will be able to get that. So otherwise, those are my concluding remarks, sir.
Okay, so before we break for our reception, all I have to say is first, thank you all for coming, and can you all join me in giving a very big round of applause to His Excellency.